Ate alone at a restaurant for the first time last week, and it wasn't even that bad. Reddit, what things did you think would be awkward to do until you actually did them? Going to a bar alone and the movies alone. I always thought people would look at me like I was a loser or something, but in reality, no one gives a crap. My dad used to always tell me this when I was growing up. You wouldn't care so much about what people think of you if you knew how little they did. I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy and went to see Louis CK perform in NYC alone. Since none of my friends wanted to go see him for whatever reason, I was kinda bummed they didn't care about him performing, but I wasn't going to miss out on one of my all-time favorite comics just because my friends didn't want to go out. Oddly enough, Louis did a bit about how nobody ever goes out to things like this alone, and asked the crowd to prove his point. How many of you are here as a group? Everyone cheers. Right. And who's here alone? Shitbed Thepirate. Lone cheers applause. What the heck? Really, the audience died and he ran with it for a few minutes. Even though the joke was towards me, I had a blast. And so did the people sitting around me. High fives and bro fists for all. Nothing wrong with going out to a show or doing something you enjoy alone if no one has the schedule to join you that evening. What are you gonna do? Cancel your own plans because you're worried what other people might think? Frick that. Live it up. Added to the bucket list, get Louis CK create a joke in his stand-up about me. I've gone to a lot of concerts alone because my friends aren't into the same music or can't afford it, and it's actually really cool most of the time. No need to feel self-conscientious if you dance like a freak or look weird. I go for the music, so once you get sucked into it you don't even care that you're all alone. A few months ago I went to a restaurant by myself and was waiting for a table behind an older gentleman who was also alone. When the host asked if we were a table for two, it got a little awkward and the older guy sheepishly asked if I wanted to join him. It felt weird joining a complete stranger for dinner, but we ended up having a great conversation about rock and roll, which we agreed upon, and religion. Not so much, although it wasn't uncomfortable. He was a really nice guy, and although I haven't seen or heard from him since, it was a really refreshing experience to share a meal with a total stranger, despite the initial discomfort. I went to Vegas alone in college. I wanted to do something for spring break, but everyone was broke, so I said screw it and booked a trip to Vegas myself. I've done a lot of things solo, especially travel, but Vegas is sort of one of those places you want to share with others. I had a blast. I had a nice hotel room all to myself. I was able to play poker as long as I wanted and eat at any of the buffets and restaurants that I wanted. I even took one of those tours to the Grand Canyon solo and met a bunch of nice older people. Vegas is especially the kind of place where I would go by myself, make up a fake backstory and be whoever I wanted to be for the weekend. But eating alone on a business trip sucks though. Other businessmen think that, for some reason, you want to hear about them cheating on their wives. WTF dude, I just wanted a steak. Change the subject by bringing up Bill Brasky. I went to a local gym where there are a lot of strong lifters. I thought if I ever went I would be embarrassed. Surprisingly, when I went there, instead of being laughed at, the guys showed me how to lift properly and helped me out on the machines. It's pretty crazy how your mind makes something seem worse than it actually is. I've been there before. I was a skinny shrimp for the majority of my life, so when I finally decided I needed to change around age 16, I headed to my local gym and was self-conscious as frick. Turns out, no one gives a frick because they were all there before at one point. I had many people help me out and give me tips on what to work on. Now I'm a jerk, and everyone loves me. As a girl, people always find it weird that I love shopping alone, but absolutely hate it in groups. Alone, I don't have to wait for other people, or have to worry about being rushed if I'm trying stuff on, and I don't need my 5 BFFs telling me whether or not something looks nice. I can just do my own thing, take my time, and not waste my time somewhere I don't want to be. Now I feel odd because I've done almost everything in this thread. Out to eat alone, bar alone, movies alone, etc. I never thought it was odd until now. The majority of people commenting and upvoting in this thread are probably quite young. Teenagers don't normally do things like go shopping alone, eat alone at a restaurant, or go to the cinema alone. These are all things every adult does at some point or another. Kayaking for the first time by myself. This usually isn't recommended, but I wanted to go and no one else wanted to do it. I did just fine once I got in the kayak. Saw all kinds of gatters, turtles and neat birds. I eat sushi alone and I've been to the movies quite a few times solo. I'm married but we work on different shifts. Also I was an only child, so I'm kind of used to doing things on my own a lot. Sushi places love people who come alone. They come for the food. I was at Disney World for a week with some friends, and we were gonna go to Epcot on a day that was calling for rain. They backed out, but I decided to go by myself. 1 year later, I'm still with the girl I met while I went there alone. Ultimate souvenir. Congrats. Going to a party where you only know the host, alone. My friend was having a 3-day long cottage party a few summers ago and I didn't know anyone else that was going, and the friend I was going to bring bailed last minute. I decided to go anyways. Turns out her friends were super chill and I had a blast. I've always thought eating alone, cutting and eating a nice steak while drinking leisurely is boss material, but dang, I'm hungry. I recently got a job that allows me to travel once in a while, always by myself. I can confirm that there are few things more boss material than going to the nicest steakhouse in an unfamiliar city, ordering a massive, delicious steak, washing it down with 21-year-old scotch, then massively over-tipping because you aren't paying for any of it anyway. Sitting at a bar on your own like in the movies. I never thought I'd actually find myself in that situation, but on a recent layover in the airport, I found my flight delayed for a few hours. So I hit the bar and ended up chatting to some dude about life and how things like this are usually really awkward, and how we thought it would be awkward before we went to the bar, and talked about it being awkward to make it not awkward. It was actually pretty awkward. I didn't even finish my drink and walked away, and after giving nervous wave, which looked like a T-Rex going for a high five, he went to shake my hand. Awkward. Looked like a T-Rex going for a high five. I hope I'm not the only one that actually made this motion to get an idea of what exactly you were trying to describe. I went backpacking alone for 6 months. While I did find it was a great way to meet people, couchsurfing and staying at hostels, there were times when I would be alone for several days. I didn't really mind it, to be honest, but it was always better when you chose to be alone. Being alone while feeling lonely and wanting to be with people is not nice. I recently had cancer and was very much bald and looked very much like Bruce Willis, bald and angry. I thought that if I went anywhere without a hat I would get a massive amount of looks for just doing remedial things. Amazingly, I went out a couple times without one and it was just kinda normal, though people were always nice. I don't know if that bodes well for the state of society, or if people are just getting used to cancer patients, which would be kind of sad. I don't think seeing bald guys is as big of an attention-grabbing deal as it is seeing bald women. Lots of guys choose to be bald, Howie Mandel, and obviously Bruce Willis, for instance, so it doesn't exactly scream cancer the way it often does for women. I'm assuming you're male due to the Bruce Willis comment. I do crap alone all the time. Go to dive bars alone, eat alone, go to concerts alone. I'm a social guy, but I also value my me time, and it's not a big of a deal. I read this as I crap alone all the time and was like, I do hope so, sir. Talking to girls, specifically ones I was interested in more than a friendship. Thankfully I learned this at around mid-end high school, otherwise I think it would have been a lonely time for me. Crash and burn stories are pretty goddamn funny relating to others. After the initial said crash and burn fades, which is pretty quick, buying condoms or women hygiene products. In the former, I was clearly planning ahead for some fun times, so why am I embarrassed? The later, they clearly weren't for me, as a guy, and so what's the big deal anyway? When buying condoms I seek out eye contact with other people and give them a slow nod. Being the first one to start dancing at a wedding. I've been to some insanely boring weddings because everyone was too afraid to start up the dancing, thinking that they would look weird. Yeah, it's a bit awkward at first, but once one person is out there, usually people start coming out of the woodwork and within a minute or so, there will be a big group dancing and having a great time. I avoided that whole situation at my own wedding by being a visible bride. Everyone noticed the bride and groom having a blast dancing, So my floor was packed the entire night. Everyone said that it was one of the most fun weddings they had ever been to because it wasn't just people sitting awkwardly at tables the whole night. I go once every couple of weeks to get sushi alone. It's nice to relax at the bar with a book, hot steak, and because I eat alone, I frequently get a "we feel sorry for this poor bastard" discount. Usually 10-piece blowfin tuna only $10. The steak is usually half price. I save $10 to $20 by eating alone. I do everything by myself. I actually try to dissuade people from coming along. Everything is faster and easier, unless it's an event that I want to share in the excitement with someone, like an air show. I used to feel self-conscious eating in public until I stopped caring for opinions. Now I eat like I do in my living room. Food everywhere. Wanted to read stories about overcoming seemingly awkward scenarios turning out to not be so awkward. Got stories about doing things alone instead. I always thought going to the bar alone was pretty weird until I did it. I have met some really awesome people just because I didn't bring someone to distract myself with. Also, I thought going to concerts alone would be weird. That crap is amazing. I eat alone in restaurants all the time. Bring a book, relax, chat up the waitresses. If you feel really awkward about it, sit at the bar. If you eat late, 2 o'clock, 3:30, the bartender will sit and bulls with you. I was working in China and there was a 4-day Chinese holiday. I wound up going to Macau alone because my co-worker didn't want to spend the money, but he was totally willing to drop $1,500 to go to Thailand, which would have been cool, but there were no last-minute flights. It literally cost something like $60 to get there and back via buses and ferries from where I was near Hong Kong. Plus $200 for the hotel and about $200 for gambling purposes, food, etc. The guy makes way more money than I do. So I decided it was either sit in my hotel and mope for 4 days or go by myself. Needless to say, I went. It was pretty cool, not the best, but certainly better than 4 days in a hotel. It's hard to have as good a time in that Vegas type atmosphere without other people around, but I was glad I did it in the end. And it was massively impressive. Imagine 3 Las Vegases spread out across 2 islands, with awesome Chinese food and awesome Portuguese food, and a ton of history as well. That's Macau. I went and had a meal before my night shift at work last week and didn't even think twice about it. It was actually kind of nice. I did this last week. The waitress said that I looked too serious while I was eating, and assumed that I had been stood up. I was given pity looks by the entire restaurant. Eating is a serious business, waitress person. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.